Dear Ajahn, what is the difference between dukkha lakkhana and dukkha vedana?
Well, dukkha vedana means painful feeling, can be mental or physical. It's one of the parts of the Vedana Kanda. So as a human being, we experience every day sometimes painful feelings from different experiences, heat and cold and aches and pains in the body and illness and hunger and all those kind of things. And mental pain, not getting what you want, you feel disappointed, feel angry, feel depressed, painful feeling in the mind. Whereas dukkha lakkhana is a broader kind of description of you could say pain, but often we say unsatisfactoriness, imperfection, also suffering. None of these words explains the dukkha lakkhana exactly as it is, but it means the characteristic of unsatisfactoriness of both physical and mental phenomena throughout the world. So it's not just your personal pain, which dukkha vedana is, you can know your personal pain, but it's hard to know the pain of someone else. They feel that their pain, but you feel your pain. But the dukkha lakkhana, that you can be aware and focus your mind on the unsatisfactory side of anything, really. Say you build a building, obviously that's not something you don't feel the pain of a building, but you can see that it's subject to degeneration because it's impermanent. Things happen to it. It gets old, gets worn out, cracked. Maybe one day it has to fall down, or maybe it is pulled down or destroyed in an earthquake or whatever. So even a building displays the characteristic of dukkha. Any kind of what we call sankhara in the world, any formation, whether it's physical or mental, is temporary, but impermanent, but also subject to dukkha. It changes and degenerates and disappears and is not a reliable place to put your trust in when you're looking or talking about happiness. Dukkha is the opposite of happiness. The only kind of happiness we talk about as lasting is nibbana, where you've seen through the true nature of phenomena, seen the dukkha lakkhana, and you know that the world is not worth grasping at because it's impermanent and it's dukkha, it's suffering. And this purifies your mind from your delusions, your wrong views. So nibbana is considered the highest happiness, but everything else in the world is subject to the dukkha lakkhana, so it's not to be clung to. And we keep making this mistake. We think, when I get this bit of money, when I get this person on my side, when I get the thing I want, then my dukkha will go away. But the nature of the world, physical and mental, is dukkha. So you keep making a mistake, expecting your dukkha to disappear, but it keep re-emerges as long as you're going in that way to solve it. If you go in the way of the Dhamma, cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, then you have a means to actually completely transcend dukkha, the dukkha lakkhana.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I have a question about the role of pleasure in the lay world. Where is the right balance between pleasure and discipline for a lay person? While adhering to the 5 precepts, I understand that the 8 precepts and the monastic code imply total abstinence from activities such as sexuality, for example, which creates confusion. Is sexuality banned? Should one aspire to abandon it completely as a lay person?
Well, the basic teaching for laity that the Buddha gave is the practice of the 5 precepts, which doesn't mean total abstinence from sexual activity. It means abandoning the intention to commit acts of sexual misconduct. So that could be translated as harmful sex. So that would include sexual abuse, rape, sex with minors and kids, or cheating on your partner, or cheating with someone else's partner. Anything that is you would call harmful sex, or is defined as sexual misconduct. So it doesn't mean no sex. It means if you have a partner, well, be honest and treat them with kindness, respect, love, but don't have harmful sexual relations. So it doesn't mean total celibacy, but lay people from time to time, it's quite common for Buddhists to take the 8 precepts where they may temporarily abstain from all sexual activity, say on a retreat for a period of days, weeks, months. Or if you enter the monastic training, then you take a vow, in the sense you abstain, you determine to abstain from all sexual activity. And as long as you're happy and able and content to do that, then you can stay in a monastery. But if you find that too difficult, because it requires renunciation, patience, those desires are very strong, they'll come up. You need insight, mindfulness and insight to abandon them, but that requires effort and patience to keep doing it, because they're so deeply ingrained into our conditioning. So if you decided it's too much, well, then you may practice as a layperson with the 5 precepts. But if you don't keep the 5 precepts, you tend to be indulging, and maybe you get addicted to sexuality. Maybe you're so addicted that you harm others in different ways through it, harmful relationships, harmful sexual activity, and obviously can make a lot of harmful, bad, negative karma for yourself, hurt others, hurt yourself, and it keeps coming back on you. So pleasure in the danger in a lay life is addiction to different kinds of pleasures, whether it's addiction to drink and drugs, addiction to gambling, addiction to pornography, addiction to things that are somehow physically or mentally harmful to yourself and others. That's something you have to investigate, isn't it? And you use the 5 precepts just to help manage your behavior in the world. So that does mean abandoning the intention to take intoxicants, drink and drugs. But you can still do certain things that bring you pleasure within the 5 precepts. You can listen to music, watch a movie, read a book, you go to a party, as long as you're keeping the 5 precepts. But all of that is also entirely voluntary. That's the other thing with the precepts. Nobody in the world is going to force you to do anything. Well, governments and laws and people may try and force you, but in terms of Buddhist practice, keeping precepts is a voluntary thing. If you keep the 5 precepts, you have to want to do it through your own wisdom. You see the value of it. And the same in a monastery. If you come and live in a monastery, that's your decision. It's voluntary. So the monastery itself will say, well, this is the requirement. If you live in this monastery, you have to keep what we call the brahmacharya, refraining from all sexual activity. Otherwise, a monastery would just become like the world again. It wouldn't be much point having a monastery if we didn't keep that rule. But you're there voluntarily. So you do need a certain amount of renunciation, determination, wisdom and understanding, seeing the value of it. And it's, if you don't want to do that, fine, well, stay in the lay life, and you can use maybe the 5 precepts as your guideline.
Sadhu Lompo. Next question. Dear Ajahn, is planning for the future a type of mental karma? Is it neither dark nor bright karma? Or because it's more like a papancha, so it's not bright karma?
Well, right. You have to see when you're planning what's going on in your mind, what other qualities are present. Because you can plan out of anxiety, say. If you're full of anxiety, your planning is more just like, oh, what if this happens? Oh no, this might happen, that might happen. And like you say, there'll be a lot of papancha, a lot of mental proliferation, discontent, worry, agitation, probably not very peaceful at all. But if there's mindfulness present, maybe you can choose to think about the future, what's going to be important, how to do things, obstacles that are coming up in your life, things that need to be done, necessary things, planning for people around you, if you have a family of people around you that you're responsible for. Planning is not illegal in Buddhism or in meditation, but if you're not mindful, planning becomes the servant of craving. And so you may get caught into planning and then expecting and wanting things and then getting disappointed if the plan doesn't turn out like you want. And remember, majority of your plans, you can only plan something based on a limited amount of information you have in the present moment. And there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, all kinds of different factors and things you don't yet know about because the future hasn't happened yet. So Buddhism encourages you to keep mindful of the impermanent nature of that planning process. The thoughts themselves, your own perceptions, ideas, thoughts are impermanent. And then events as they unfold, what's going to happen tomorrow is uncertain, isn't it? It's impermanent, uncertain. You don't know yet. So you keep that in mind so that your planning doesn't create suffering for you or other people. So when tomorrow your plan doesn't come to fruition, then you can cope with that because you're already ready for it, as it were. I was expecting that. Like today when I was on a plane from Adelaide to Melbourne, and we got to Melbourne and everyone is ready to, as soon as the plane stops, everyone grabs their bag, stands up, ready to go out. And then we waited and we waited and we waited. And then the pilot came on the loudspeaker and said, "Oh, they're not letting us off the plane yet. I got to turn the engines off." I don't know what the reason was. He didn't go into that, but everyone's standing there. Everyone goes, "Oh," because they all want to get off and go home. And then they're all standing there and he turns the engine off. And we're just standing on the runway. And then they had to get this sort of vehicle to come and pull the plane into where it was going to dock. And then they dock the plane. So the whole process took ages. I don't know how long. I wasn't looking at a clock, but, like 20 minutes or half an hour just standing in the plane waiting to get off the plane. That's typical, isn't it, of the world, whether it's plane travel, car travel, work, social things, everything is uncertain. And so if you factor that in when you're planning to the future, that helps to remove a lot of the suffering from when events don't turn out as you planned. You really don't know what you'll be doing, where you'll be going tomorrow. You have a rough idea and that's what you base your plans on. But there'll be different things that happen. Some better or good things will happen, nice surprises, and some disappointments and difficulties and obstacles will emerge as well. And you just have to be ready for that by preparing for the uncertainties of life. That would be my recommendation anyway.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, it's distressing to see the atrocities happening in the Middle East. Could you share a few words on how Buddhists place their heart as we navigate through this crazy time?
Well, compassion, mindfulness, patience. If it's in the short term, if you're reading or watching a lot of news and it's making you distressed, you have to be aware that maybe that you're putting you in an unwholesome state of mind. So perhaps take in a bit less of that information. And that's not to cut yourself off from the world, but just to minimize or manage how much of the information you're receiving, partly because there's often a lot of confusion when you read papers or news sites or online. There's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of different emphasis from different sides. So one person will emphasize one thing, another. Some of it's true, some maybe not true. You don't know. So I would recommend filtering how much you watch and read and find out. Keep it to a minimum and to a level that you can manage to keep your equanimity and mindfulness and your wholesome states of mind as you absorb information. That's one of your guidelines. If you just let everything in the world come to you through your eyes and your ears, it will overwhelm you quite quickly, I think. So practice some wisdom, wise reflection here. Wise attention is the Buddhist word, yoniso manasikara. Know what is the right amount for your intake of news. And then sit back, something like a war in another part of the world between two groups of people. There's very little you personally can do to stop or influence that. You can have the compassion and the wish for them to stop, for them to be free from that suffering. All wars are just destruction, chaos, death. Terrible things happen. So you have the basic, maybe cultivate the basic compassion for everyone affected, suffering in that place and any other place. Because, the way the news works is we're focusing on one particular thing at one time. So now it's the war in Gaza. But remember, there are wars in other parts of the world as well. And often there's forgotten wars, places where people are killing each other, fighting, suffering in the same sort of way, but they're just not making the news. Like Africa, West Africa, other parts of the world where there are armed conflict. So, it's just one reflection. It's part of, unfortunately, it's part of living in the world. There are other armed conflicts around the world. Number one, maybe come back to yourself and say, can I still do that? Do I still have the intention to kill? Can I live without killing? Can I, maybe you still kill that insects. So, you feel sad about a war in Gaza, okay. But then maybe you're still killing ants in your kitchen or something. Do you still get angry at home? Do you get angry with your kids or your partner or someone at work or some neighbor? Do you get angry watching the news? Like that anger that's arising in your heart is also the same quality that leads people to fight and wars. So we can help the world by reducing our own anger, maintaining more equanimity. It's not easy, I know, but this is the way we have to go in our personal practice. And maybe there's things you can do in terms of charity work, encouraging those in positions of power to help negotiate peace, relief, aid, all those kind of things. We can do what we can just to encourage the governments and organizations. But I would start from your own personal perspective, reducing your own negative qualities of mind, because that's good for you, the people around you, and the world as a whole.
Sadhu, Lumpur. Next question. Dear Ajahn, I like to listen to Dhamma more than doing meditation. How can I find more motivation to do more meditation?
Well, sometimes we have to kind of grab the situation by the scruff of the neck and say, I'm going to meditate for this period of time, 10 minutes. If you're struggling with it or you're new to it, well, just start with 10 minutes. I'm going to sit still, work with the breathing meditation to be mindful of my breath for 10 minutes every day. So maybe pick a time in your day that you think you can do that. You have to think it through, what might work. And again, like the question about the future and plans, you make a plan tomorrow or today. I'm going to meditate at this time. And then you try and stick to it. Hopefully you can. Sometimes events will come up that may interrupt your meditation or take you away to something else. But try and pick a time that you can meditate. So early morning is often a time when no one will interrupt you. That's one you can try. You think it through and then try and pick and stick to that. So you're going to meditate at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever time in the morning, and try and stick to that, keep to it with a bit of discipline, commitment, determination, and just start there, start small, and you get small victories of determined practice, discipline practice, and then maybe you expand from there up to longer periods, more often, or longer periods. So yeah, maybe start small and just keep going. Don't give up. Don't get sidetracked. Don't get disillusioned by your own thoughts that say, oh, I'm no good at this. This is hopeless. I can't do this. You know, all the doubts, all the negativity. That's part of the meditation. Just develop a good attitude, being friendly to yourself, cultivating a relaxed attitude of putting effort into your meditation for the period of time you've decided to do it, and keep doing it.
Sadhu, Lompo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I have always thought emotional, mental pain is worse than physical pain. But knowing about the Four Noble Truths, I think now physical pain may be worse, since we can manage mental pain by cutting off the painful memory. But it is quite impossible to cut off physical pain, since it is our body. Since physical pain is inevitable as one ages, could you advise how one deals with physical pain?
Start practicing contemplating physical pain early on in your life. Then later in your life, it won't be unmanageable or difficult because you already know what to do. You know, the more we practice, the better we'll get at it. The more we have our own resources, mental and physical resources of patience, mindfulness, and then insight into the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of, for example, physical pain. All these 5 khandhas I was talking about tonight, you know, they kind of fit together, work together. They're part of the same thing, this human being. There's the physical side, then there's the mental side. And so we do get physical pain and mental pain. But it's all based on having a body, being born as a human being. And painful feelings are inevitable because this human form is imperfect. It's, you know, at the very least, there'll be a little bit of aches and pains. You know, even the most fittest, healthiest person can't stay in the same posture all day, all night. You know, they have to change posture because it gets painful being in one posture. That's why we move around. We get hunger, we get feelings of hot and cold, this and that. Sometimes it's very mild, so most people won't even notice it, but it's always there. Painful feelings are always there. So the more mindfulness you bring up, pay attention and start learning about the nature of this body, and then feelings arising based on the body, the more you understand it, the less you will suffer, the less you will create mental suffering around it. Painful feelings, you know, it's your karma coming back to you from this life and maybe past life. So you can't always control what happens in that sense. You know, we're lucky in this day and age, in this country, we've got a lot of healthcare, doctors, nurses, hospitals, different techniques and medications to help reduce pain, manage pain, of course, but you'll never get completely free from pain. So it's something we do have to learn how to address and be mindful of and understand, as it's just not self. And your aim is to get to that point where you can see it's not you. You are not your pain. Pain comes about through different causes and conditions, but it's not a self. And you're aiming to have enough clarity of insight to see the separation between the mind that knows and the painful feeling. And as you say, as we get older, that we tend to get more pain, recurring pain. So better to start as soon as you hear the Buddhist teaching, start practicing mindfulness and investigating this, because it will help you through your life. So keep practicing, be very patient, practice mindfulness, and you'll learn about pain, change your attitude towards it so that you don't take so much ownership of it. You know it and you can be with it, but you don't take ownership of it. It's not self.
Sadhu, Lumpur. Does anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask? There are no more further questions, Lumpur.
Okay, we'll call it a night, and wish you all well in your practice, wish you good health. We wish you to have as little pain as possible, but we can't expect too much, can we? So just hopefully you can have enough mindfulness and wisdom to deal with your pain, and we'll see you again next time.